Okay, so the work that I'm going to talk about is basically led by three people in the group. That's Chitti Arvind, who's a PhD PMRF student, and Suyash, who was a master's student, a BSMS student, who's now doing his PhD in University of Florida, and Rohit, who's an undergraduate working in the lab currently. Uh, so if you remember, I was saying that there are three main themes of research that we have, and I did not really talk much about the bird evolution and biogeography, but kind of we got some hints about that. But bioacoustics and behavior is what I'm going to talk to you about, and this is important because, like in this photo, most often you don't see birds, and birds also don't see each other very often. So most of the communication happens with sound, and that is where that is how I got into this. It's because one of the species that I was working on, the Sholicola, which is on the left here, I was actually doing surveys for them to look at where they are found and where they are not found. If you remember the previous, a lot of studies that started like that. And so I went from one mountain in Annamalais. I was doing playback. This bird was not thought to be seen at that time. There were less than 100 records. So I somehow saw it, I recorded the call, and I did playbacks, and I could find the bird very easily. And then I went over from Annamalais to the next mountain across the Palghat Gap to Nilgiris, and I was doing playback, and the bird was not responding. And I thought that was really strange, and the bird sounded a little different as well. And basically that got me started on this kind of, like, now it's I think the 24th year that I'm working on this species one way or the other. And what's come out through that is, of course, that these are not the species that they were thought to be. Their songs are different, they're genetically different across these mountains and so on. So here's the landscape. These are the Western Ghats, the high elevation mountain tops here. This is the Nilgiris, Palghat Gap goes here, and that's the Annamalai and Palni hills, one of the big mountains. That's where Ashwin, all the work that Ashwin was talking about is here. And this already, I think you already know that this is what the habitat is like. You have forests and grasslands, so the birds are naturally kind of isolated in these mountains. So the story that I'm going to tell you is mostly from within this box, and of one species. That's this group, the Sholicola. Remember, we discussed that on each of these mountains, there were different species. They were genetically different. They're isolated by millions of years. Two different groups. This turned out to be a different genus, and this one turned out to be another genus. And our focus is on this species, the white-bellied Sholicola, or Sholakili, which means the bird from the Shola. So one thing that was really interesting was that this has a very, very elaborate, very long song. So when it's singing, it just keeps singing for like 10 minutes, it'd be singing. And a lot of like very, very complex, very variable song. If you heard a magpie robin, I mean, it sounds a bit like that, but it's a little bit more than that. So in this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about song complexity, how we started measuring that, and then about shared songs, how neighbors kind of share songs, and then a lot of Chitti's work, which is about population differences in song and genetic differences, trying to relate the two, and a little bit about female song. So let's see. So this is called a spectrogram. Maybe many of you already know. This time on this axis and frequency on this axis. And what you see here, the darker it is, the more intense the sound is. So I don't know if that plays. No, it doesn't play. So that's straightforward. You can probably try and imagine what that sounds like. But I think maybe I have another song. So what was happening was, we have a lot of undergrads, right? So we have BSMS students. So students come in and they have they come with very mixed background. In the first years, they do physics, maths, chemistry, biology. So one of the students turned to birding in the first year. Then he started asking, what is this short wing? What is this Sholicola? And then he started listening to the songs. And then everybody around him in the lab was saying that it is a very complex song. It's a very, very complicated song. And Suyash was like, what does that mean? What do you mean when you say some bird has a complex song and not complex song? How do you quantify it? And I just shoo him away. I'd say, no. It's like you're just in your first year. You'll learn, read some papers, go away, and then he'll come back with some paper, and then I slowly he started asking me if I want to kind of quantify it. Can I try some methods? I say, yeah, sure, go ahead. And then he kept coming back. So over 2 years, he iterated, every time I was just telling him to go away, like just give him a paper and tell him to go away, and he'll come back with something. And finally, I woke up when he came back with a formula which he said would kind of quantify song complexity. Essentially, what that does is it kind of tries to look at every note, and then it creates like a matrix of distances, and it tries to kind of look at how different the songs are. So more different each of the note is with each other, the more complex the song is. The cool thing that he did was he quantified it. So he said, okay, I've got one magic number which explains the variability in song. And then I was like, what does that even mean? Maybe it's just because of the noise in your recordings or something like that. So he said, okay, what I'll do is I'll make synthetic songs. So he started making different notes. These are what you call notes of a bird's song. A song is usually a set of notes. So he synthesized these. He said, this is B, C, and D. A and B are very similar to each other, but they are only different in the shape. Yeah, and then C and D are relatively more different. So his idea was, if you have these different combinations of A, B, C, and C, Ds, can you then come up, which is the most complex song? So I think most people would agree that A, B, C, D is the most complex. If you just have A, it's not that complex because the same note that is repeating, right? So he did that, and he said, yeah, my method works well. And he compared it with other indices like Shannon, index and so on. And then I said, well, maybe it works with the synthetic songs, but how do you know that it won't work? How will it work with real birds? I don't think it'll work with real birds. So he said, okay, fine. Then I'll do a literature survey, and I'll look at all the birds that people say have complex song. So usually, in literature, someone who's studying birds, they would say, oh, this has a very complex song and something. So whenever he did a literature survey, he got all the birds' names, and then he downloaded their songs from various sources, and then he calculated his index, the NVI, for all of these birds. And so he found that actually the length of the song doesn't matter much, because sometimes even if you have short songs, you can have very complex songs. One cool thing was at the top end of the spectrum is the white-bellied Shola that we started out with. So now what he thinks is that this is, so he published this, when he was still in his undergrad, he published this in Methods in Ecology and Evolution, which is a pretty cool journal. And what he says is that the Shola has one of the most complex songs in the world, at least based on his this thing. But my friends who know me have told me, of course, he's your student, so and you study Shola. So any way of quantifying song complexity, you're going to say that this is the most complex song. But anyway, so that apart, yeah, so that's that, right? So one thing that then Suyash got interested in was, of course, now he's quantified song complexity. Then he said, okay, now I want to kind of learn some field techniques. So I said, fine, you go ahead. We have a field station in Kodaikanal. you go and you can record the songs and see if there is any song complexity variation between individuals. So he did that. I don't know if this will play. No, that also doesn't play. Okay. So he did that. So he actually color banded 48 birds. So this is what that looks like. Just like the bands that Umesh was talking about, which is the metal bands of the numbers. In addition to that, we also had color bands like that. And what that does is that you can just look at the bird and you know the ID, because each one has a unique unique color. So 48 birds, he got a lot of recordings. One cool thing was that he just did it every year. So from 2019 till 2023, till he left for his PhD, he just kept recording songs. He went back to the same territories of all of these birds, and every time he recorded the song, he took the GPS point as well. So yeah, I think this doesn't matter so much. He basically, what he did was he also classified these notes. He took various quantitative measures, and he was trying to get to that ABCD. The same way how we had that ABCD, he was trying to get that data for the Sholicola. One thing that happened here was that the data was very, very difficult to understand. It looked like it was very complex. We couldn't see any patterns of difference between song of one individual and another individual. And at some point, Suyash said, I don't understand what is happening. And then we spoke to Guha, and Guha pointed out a linguist who works in Indranil, works in Jadavpur University. And Indranil said, well, this is the kind of work that we do with speech and language, and they quantify things. And one of the methods that they use was this thing called n-grams. It's a very simple thing. Basically, if you have like the ABCD from the first example, you can have 1 gram, which is just one single note. So A, B, or C, D. Or you could have 2 grams, which is sets of 2. So that is A, B, B, C, C, D. Okay? And then 3 grams, which is 3 combinations of 3 notes. Yeah, it could be in different combinations. And then you have 4 grams and then 5 grams. That's the way that goes. Yeah, but you can see that one is nested within the other, right? So 5 grams are made of 4 grams, which are made of 3 grams, which are made of 2 grams, and so on. So this kind of made this very interesting basis for further analysis between individuals. And one of the things that we had to figure was, how do we know that we have enough songs of an individual? So these are these accumulation curves that people do in ecology often, and they use it, for example, if you're working on plants, or let's say if you're working on pathogens. How do you know that you've sampled all the pathogens in an area? So for every sampling unit, you see how many new ones you recover, and at some point the curve saturates. And that's what Suyash did for songs. And he found that at 150 songs, so basically if you have 150 songs of Sholicola, you have pretty much captured the song variation in an individual. That's what he said. But then he was getting onto this 1 gram, 2 gram, and 3 gram. And because there are so many possible combinations, the question was, probably it's very difficult that it saturates even at very high numbers, because just the combinations are so many. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a caveat that we have. So what Suyash set out to do was he decided to use n-grams to look at song variation. Yeah.
Some n-grams, like 2 grams, 3 grams, will occur more frequently than others.
Yes.
So if you, let's say, do take a motif of a 3 gram and then run it across the entire sequence, you might find occurrences repeating.
Yeah, you're very right. I mean, I have a slide which is hidden about that, but you're right. as you increase the number of grams, the occurrence actually goes down.
Right.
So there is a steady decline with the number of grams. So that's a little bit of, it creates a challenge. I'll explain the challenge further. In the biological, understanding the biology, it creates a challenge. I'll tell you how. So what he was trying to do was look at variation across individuals. So what that means is, you have one individual here, another individual neighboring territory, and if you remember Farah's example of badgers, which had territories next to each other, right? So similarly, if you have different birds, the question is, are the songs shared between these individuals? Yeah. And then because he had data for different years, he also started looking for consistency. So what is the level of consistency in the songs across individuals? So is the same individual singing the same song over these different years? Yeah, so that's an interesting question to ask. And one thing that he found right away is that 1 gram, which is individual notes, they are actually found everywhere. So each note is found in all the individuals across years. Yeah, the individual data is not here, it will come. But 2 gram and 3 gram are quite specific. So what that means is the individual notes are common, but combinations of these notes are unique. Yeah, and that's actually quite interesting. And then the main question that Suyash was asking at that point was, all of these are territories of birds in Bombay Shola. We have field station here. And so he walked around for 3 years, collecting songs of all of these birds. And what he found was, he took the 2 gram data, because 3 gram data is less, just because of that thing. And what he found was, as the distance increases, there is more and more difference in song. So what that means is, neighbors actually sing more similar songs than kind of individuals much farther away. Yeah. So you have to remember that all of them have the same, they share all the same alphabets. They're just using them in different combinations. Yeah. That's that. Yeah, with geographical distance. Yeah.
Was he able to differentiate between the different songs? I mean, let's say
analytically.
Yeah. Was he able to differentiate them?
Yeah. So it's only everything. All the differentiation is analytical.
Okay.
It's not. You can't make out anything with the ear.
Yeah. From the those frequency maps that you are showing us.
Yeah.
I mean, how could he not say, like, as the distance increases, while capturing, he could have captured the same song, but because of the distance, the intensity might have decreased and he might have heard lesser notes. So because of which there might have been,
Yeah, I think, it's a good point that you're making. I should have been a little bit more clear. What that means is, it's not distance from, it's not the recording distance. So recording distance is the same. So what he's doing is, he's going with the recorder, and if you're the target, he's kind of pointing it at you, the recorder at you, and recording. And then he goes to other individuals and then records them all the same way. So the point that he's trying to say is that the distance between you and Ansil there is more. So that is what is the causing the difference. Yeah, Farah. Yeah.
What about the pitch of the song? Is that changes? Like, does the pitch changes? I mean, in the sense that individuals which are in the nearby territory, they may not have. If song is basically advertising your territory, right? So you may not have to scream so loud. As opposed to if you have competitors far away, then you really want to make sure you are here.
Yeah. So the thing about, at least for this species, the cool thing was that actually none of the variables are different. So if you just look at variables, see individual variable by variable, they're all similar. In fact, even the notes are the same. So they seem to have a lot of similarity. what we were wondering is, what is so different? Like, how is it, I mean, just give me, like, let me go through this one slide and then I'll come back to a little bit more to finish that thought. Sorry, you have a question?
I mean, what that means is there is a dictionary, but there is no like grammar. I mean, I mean, I thought that they had a proper syntactical structure to their sentences.
Can you hold that thought? Yeah, it's a good point. Just let me finish this slide and then we'll come back to that. Yeah. So this is like the Venn diagram. I mean, it's fairly simple. This is an individual, and all these ellipses are different years. So you can see that if you have 1 gram, basically a lot is shared, right? Like 60% is shared across all the individuals. But then the moment you go to 2 gram, you see that they start separating out and then the sharing decreases. Yeah. And then you start looking at song sharing of neighboring individuals within the year. So these are now different individuals. Yeah, 02, 03, 04 and so on. And you can again see that 64% is shared. Yeah. But then you look at the 2 gram and you can see that there are differences there. Yeah. So essentially what's happening is, coming back to the question of what is really different, on field when you are working with these birds, so now you know that all the notes are the same across all of these individuals. Just the combination of how they are using it is the same. But through the year, they are using different notes, different sets of notes. Yeah. And individuals are using different sets of notes. So this seems like it's very complex, right? But having said that, if you take the call of a neighbor and play back to an individual, the response is like immediate. It's in seconds. So there's something there that we are not able to figure out with all of these analytics, but the birds seem to get it. And I still think that the answer lies in something simpler, not more complex. But we just haven't been able to figure what is that method to kind of simplify this complexity, if you want to say that. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, you have the mic as well. So.
Yeah, I just had one question. So when you talk of song complexity,
yeah,
you're talking about variation in notes, right? So so basically if A is one frequency and then B is the next frequency above it and C and so on. So then is AABB less complex than AADD or AACC?
Yeah.
Basically.
So thanks, that's a good question. And you notice that I talked about song complexity first, and then I made this little bit of a jump to syntax, right? Which is how the notes are mixed. That's because when Suyash first looked at song complexity, his index across individuals, he did not find any difference. And that is because all the notes are shared. So all of the individuals are using the same notes. So his song complexity index actually did not work. And that is why we went to, to this linguist way of looking at n-grams. And so when I'm saying that songs are really complex, it's just an overall thing of how songs are complex. But the individual variation is captured in the combination of notes. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so I want to now, so we were now talking about individuals in one population so far. I want to step back. This is work that we had done back in 2011, where we had recorded the songs of these birds in all of the different populations across the Sky Islands. And the answer was actually quite simple, as you can imagine, that a lot of these birds actually, songs are very different. And even within this landscape, which is just 60 kilometers, actually it's about 100 kilometers, the songs are quite different. Yeah, and this is just a plot of that. And one of the variables that we found different was this thing called CVM. So I'll try and explain this. So birds have two syringes. Syrinx is how they make sound. So they have two of them. And they can theoretically use both of them simultaneously. So essentially, they can produce two different sounds at the same time. Yeah. So what we find is that there are individuals that sing like this. Yeah. So that's a very simple song, and some that sing like this, which have overlapping sounds. So you cannot get overlapping sounds unless you're using a mechanism to produce these the same. So technically we can't say that it is dual syrinx usage, because to say that in scientific parlance, you have to silence one syrinx and then check if it is made by one and the other and so on. And we study wild birds, so we can't do that. But you can make that assumption, and we quantified it by using a measure. If the songs are more than a particular millisecond, then we call it dual syrinx, the CVM, complex vocal mechanism. And that was what was different across these. You see this? So just within a landscape, within a mountain, the songs are very different between these two. But these were, the extremes of the landscape. So we were wondering if there is a gradation or something like that. And another thing that we did was we looked at gene flow, and we used these genetic markers called microsatellites. People don't use them anymore. So 15 microsats. And basically we found that there's not much, so there is gene flow across the landscape, but there are some barriers as well. So then Chitti came into the picture, who kind of decided to ask these questions. If we start recording songs at more, at smaller distances, maybe the difference will become like a gradual change rather than like these abrupt large changes. And she said she would also like to look at genetic population structure. So look at gene flow as well as the song differences, and then see if there are any kind of, do these match each other? Yeah, and then try and understand what may be driving that. So what she did was, again, she set out to misnet birds across the entire landscape. She collected songs, a whole lot of songs from across the landscape. And most of the analysis is from these three right now. She's still working on the others. And if you remember, that's the song of the Sholikola. Let me see. Okay, this one's playing. No, it doesn't play. I thought I heard it sing. Oh, there's some jugaad there. Yeah, okay, anyway. Sorry? Oh, you're playing from the phone. Okay, yeah. So anyway, you want to try playing it? Yeah. So, so what she's been finding so far is that if you quantify the song, like basically every time how you work with acoustics is that you create that spectrogram and then you collect data on maximum frequency, minimum frequency, the note length, and so on, and then you do some statistics with that. So whenever we say songs are different, that's what we mean, is that they are quantitatively different. So essentially what was happening was, there was no difference in the basic spectral variables, which is all of this. But then, if you remember the CVM, right? so which was different. That when she started looking across the landscape, earlier we had data from here and here, right? We didn't have these in-between populations. And it turns out that one of this one, KD, which is Kodaikanal, actually has much lower CVM than the others. So that seems to be something. So that's like it's like a dialect, you could say. It's not that those individuals do not know how to produce CVM, because they still have it, but it's just that they use it less. Proportionally, they use it less. Yeah, so that's like a cultural trait. You can think of, some strange language things like in Tamil and Malayalam, there's Ra. Yeah, I think if you remember the old name of Calicut, it was Kozhikode, and nobody could pronounce it, which is why they have changed it, I think. But anyway, so it's not that others cannot pronounce it, but it's just that that's how people pronounce. That's it's just a culturally learned thing. Yeah, and usually like our motivation of understanding, like studying acoustics, is to understand isolation and see what is happening to these birds, like who are more connected with each other than than the others. So then Chiti decided to use n-grams, the same thing that Suyash had, and so we know how that works. And what she found was, again, when she looked at 1 gram, all of the populations are similar. Yeah, and this is really bizarre. We never expected it. But it starts differentiating when you start looking at 2 gram. 3 gram is a little messy because we don't have enough data because of that, because it's nested, this thing. But this is fascinating. What it means is, not only are all the individuals in a neighborhood sharing notes, but actually they're sharing notes all across the landscape. Yeah, so it's really bizarre, I think. I have no idea how that information is being transferred. Yeah.
So when you're taking 3 grams, are you taking 3 grams like this is 1 3 gram and then you go to the next 3 grams, so in total 6, or is it like 4? So 3 gram and you shift to 1 and then it's the next 3 gram?
Yeah, so I think we did it both ways, excluding the 1 and also separately. So we've tried both ways. It doesn't make too much of a difference because the starting point is the same. So actually it doesn't change too much. I mean, you're hoping that birds also are counting from there, like from the start of the song. Yeah, yeah.
So when you said like, when you said that 1 grams are very similar throughout the landscapes, they must be like the primary notes basically that were shared ancestrally, and after a certain point they just made combinations among populations, and that is how it is.
Your story is as good as mine at this point because we really don't know how this is working, right? Yeah. I don't think there are parallels in literature for something like this. Okay. Usually what happens is the classic acoustics, bird song literature says that there are dialects. So there are, species in one area which have some dialect, and as you go further away, they have different notes. Now, in our case, we don't have different notes. We have the same notes. So, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. We'll have to see how to, yeah. Just remind me at the end of the talk. I have some additional comment on that just behind you.
So this machine learning and AI to like, are you planning?
Yeah, we are doing it already. There's also a Google-led challenge. So if any of you are into coding, you could have earned $50,000, I think, if you could Kaggle, if you could work on this species and detect it. But anyway, yeah, sorry.
You want the song?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sorry? Data? This data? Not right now. Suyash has big plans for it. So, and Chiti is still not finished her PhD. So, yeah. So that's the song, the high frequency one. And just keeps going on and on and on. And yeah, and there's this thing that they do called song matching, which is like your jugalbandi. Basically, there's one individual which sings, and then they actually kind of pretty much sing the same thing, the neighboring individual, and this one adds something else. And then in the next round, the other one adds something else, and so on. It's actually quite interesting. Yeah, sorry?
Very funny question. Have you met music directors to get some idea? Music directors.
No, but some of the acoustic data that we collected have been used in movies as background scores. So, yeah, but other than that, there was a sound engineer who contacted us, and he wanted to use some real forest sounds and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, usually when, I don't have a spectrogram here. Yeah, see, I mean, so this is a very clean recording. Nothing else is there. But how we work is we try and we would digitize these things only. So if there were other sounds, we would kind of leave them out. So it's not an automated process, which we do for some things, but not for this. Yeah.
What if there are some certain frequencies that you might not catch? Because of what if there are certain frequencies that you might have not caught, but I mean, those two individuals might hear them, high frequencies or whatever.
Yeah, so our recorders and this thing is equipped for 2 times the range of birds. So it's impossible that it is going above. I mean, you can argue it's going below, but even below doesn't happen. Because these are birds. If it was like bats or something like that, then that is possible because your detectors. So birds are primarily within the human. We work in the same frequency range. So there are no mystery signals. I mean, at least you have to also think about what is the function of this. They are trying to communicate with each other in the dark forest understory. So they are sending a lot of signal, like they're sending a lot of information with which they are managing pretty much their entire lives. So they are saying, this is my territory, and they are also using it to attract mates, teach their young how to sing. All of that happens just in this very dark understory environment.
Say that they mysteriously, deliberately speak in a mysterious way.
No, it's unlikely because they also need to detect it, and bird hearing is also in that same range. Unlikely that is happening. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. Then Chiti. Oh yeah, this is just an interesting plot which looks at songs across individuals. Doesn't matter. But Chiti, if you remember, was also doing genetics. So what she did was she collected blood samples all across the landscape, including here. This area, high waves, is interesting because there's actually, so these birds are found about 1,400 meters. But between here and here, this is Periyar Tiger Reserve, if anybody knows that area. There is a ridge, and that ridge is about 1,200 or so. So I think Shortwings use it, Sholicola use it occasionally, but they are not found there very frequently. So it's like a suboptimal kind of elevation. 1400 is great. Below 1200, they're never found. So up to 1200, maybe they could be moving in or something like that. So that's what happens here. So anyway, they went out and got a bunch of data, samples, from which they generated this DDRAD data, SNP data basically. And they also had a reference genome to kind of map this to and so on. But essentially what she found was that the high wavies was very different from all the rest. Most of the others seem to have some pattern of isolation by distance. Somebody was asking about that in the morning. But high wavies was otherwise, this is high wavies. That's what is much different from the others. This is a structure plot. What it shows is, how different populations are. So this is high wavies. The rest are pretty much kind of mixed. There's some signature of Kodaikanal and Berejam that is here. These being slightly different, but yeah, that's just for representation. So the main takeaway here is that songs, there are dialects, but it is at the 2-gram level. And then there is some genetic variation which shows that some populations are also different. So at this point, we thought that we were trying to kind of understand how all of this variation is happening. What may be the drivers, what is responsible for this. So we were looking, so there was this PhD student who had looked at this bird all across the landscape. So all of these are his plots where he went and looked for these birds multiple times, like 4 times. That's an occupancy. If you remember the occupancy framework people talked about, that's what he did. And what he found is that in some parts of the landscape, you don't find this bird. And we started looking for reasons to why that may be. And one of the hypotheses that we had was this asynchrony in rainfall. So although it is the same mountain, one side of the mountain, so Munnar, for example, gets high rainfall in July because it gets the main southwest monsoon. But the other end, Kodaikanal, it gets the retreating monsoon in October, November. So we think that that may be one of the reasons why there is a, so this is the rainfall, the precipitation difference. This was work done by Akshay, looking at that gradient, the rainfall gradient. So we still think that there is something there. We haven't teased it out as such. And Arunima is basically trying to parameterize this to develop a connectivity model to see how these birds can move across this landscape. Yeah, because now we have some idea of what these birds are doing, how they are connected culturally. So the songs are culture, yeah, and also genetics. So we should have a pretty good idea of the connectivity in this landscape. So we were at this point when Rohit, who's a undergrad, he decided to intern with us. And, like a lot of annoying undergrads, I hope there are no undergrads here, he came up and said, you know what, I think that there's females have really complex songs. And I was like, come on, like we've been working on this for 20 years, like, go away, like record some more, show me the data, record some more and come back. So he started really taking this very seriously. Essentially, because we had these color-banded birds, he could actually target some recordings on that. And then he started showing us some spectrograms of the male song and female song. I don't know if this will play, that also doesn't play. So he felt that the female songs are quite complex as well. And he said, what if I take the female song and I start looking at that same landscape and see if the female songs are different? Don't ask me why, but he said he wants to do it. I said, okay. And then he went ahead and got a whole bunch of female song data. And then what did he find? He found that there was no difference in male song and female song, irrespective of which parameter you measure. Okay, so now actually it seems like a negative result, but this negative result is actually very interesting because see, there's a reason why males sing. It's to advertise, it's to get mates, whole territories, and so on. So why are females singing with the same complexity? And this we don't actually know the answer to. And only thing that we found was, so all the different parameters, they're all pretty much the same, except one, which is a song complexity. And what was he finding? That the female actually has more complex songs than the male. Now, initially we thought this is just some problem with the data. We said, go away. He went, came, collected more data. And we are still at that point where we don't know the answer. We know that male songs are longer. This is song duration. But the note length is roughly the same. We have not done the n-gram things for this, because I think if we do that, my guess is that we'll find that the same notes are there in males and females. And I have absolutely no idea why. Yeah, sorry. You remember the note variability index, that same one? Yeah, the question is what complexity index are we using? So he's tried a bunch of different things. He's done PCAs. He's looked at these Markov chain models to see, if there are particular notes that have a particular sequence. And I mean, I told him before he did it that he's not going to find a pattern, but he did it anyway. But now he's going to try something else. Yeah, sorry, you have, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering whether, does it matter the relative amplitude of two notes which are played one after the other? Can that make the song more complex? As in, so not just the frequency, but if two notes are happening one after the other, but how loud they are is different, like the relative loudness, can that make it more complex? And can that
That's very interesting. We haven't looked at that. Maybe that is something worth exploring. Possible. I mean, the initial notes are usually lower in amplitude, and then it kind of builds up. It's worth exploring. But the thing about female song is that female song is thought to be very rare. And until 5 years back, if you looked at the literature, there was not that much literature itself. And then suddenly people started saying, hey, we don't have female song data because most of the female songs seem to be in the tropics, the tropical birds that have female songs. And now there are these repositories of female song recordings. And so far, I don't think there are many recordings from India. So this is one species where we know for sure that females sing, because these birds are identical. When you look at them, male and female, they're the same. So you have to sex them molecularly, and only then you know which is male and which is female. In fact, when you're recording the song, you don't know whether you're recording a male or a female. Only after you get the genetic data that you may know. So the big question is, why do females sing? It's a lot of investment. It goes through a lot of hormonal changes. When I discussed with endocrinologists, what they say is that you can induce a zebra finch female to sing by giving it a testosterone shot. But so what that means is that, I mean, why do these females have so much testosterone if they need, if that is what it makes to make it sing? So I don't know the answer, but Rohit is on to something, obviously. And he's done some playback experiments. He's planning, it's going on. And just day before yesterday, he presented this female song work at this animal behavior society meeting in Canada. And he got this outstanding poster, and you can see that he's quite thrilled because everybody kept telling him nothing will work, and something is coming out. Someone asked about AI. So this is another undergraduate student in ISER, Aditya. And what Aditya has been doing is, there's a new AI package called BirdNet. I don't know if any of you have heard of BirdNet. It's really fantastic. It works very well with North American birds. You just stick it out and it will identify a lot of the common birds. It also works in India. Only thing is that it doesn't work for the Shola because it has this crazy complexity. So what Aditya has been trying to do is to kind of tweak that detector to modify that BirdNet algorithm such that it can detect this bird. And I think, so we have one individual near our field station where we have this automated recorder, and we have the recorder going all through the year. Okay, so it's on like the entire year. And when he looked at the singing pattern, he subsampled some of the data, and he listened to it, like he manually verified it. And that is what is actual song, the blue. And then the songs detected is what BirdNet is detecting. And you can see that that's a pretty close match, kind of, at least, yeah. But what's cool is that you're getting an idea of when birds sing. I mean, when do these birds sing? And that seems to be in a particular kind of breeding season. Now, what I think where we are headed to from here is looking at seasonality across the landscape. So when do these birds, because if there is asynchronous breeding, let's say birds in one area are breeding at one time and another area are breeding at another time, it's enough to create at least a cultural difference, if not a genetic difference. So that's what Aditya is probably going to do for his master's thesis. There are recorders running right now. It'll go on for a year or 8 more months, where he'll have data from all of this landscape, and then he'll probably have these plots that look at the phenology of these birds singing from across the landscape. So then we can see if this phenology matches the rainfall, phenology. So at peak rainfall times, as the peak rainfall shifts, do the bird songs, are they also shifting? But more importantly, what I'm really interested in is developing a detector for the female song and find out when do females sing, because we still don't know why females sing. And for that, what Rohit has been doing now is deploying these camera traps. It turns out that he's also very good at finding nests, and so it's great. So he's putting up these camera traps and tandem audio recorders. So he has camera as well as audio, so that he can get which individual is at the nest and which one is singing. The idea is to find out the seasonality of female song. So do females sing at the time of breeding? There are hormonal costs for some of these things, the choices that they are making. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But since we have, sorry, I'll just finish this. Since we're in a disease ecology, I thought I'll put in at least one slide on disease. And that is that malaria infections, females and males, yeah, we have a lot more males than females that we have captured. And yeah, so basically I can't say anything about that. But yeah, anyway, sorry, you had a question.
What is the impact of the stress condition on the song?
So I don't know about this species. Yeah, so this species is now in, Wildlife Protection Act, which governs the protection of all animals. This species has recently been moved to Schedule 1. They have Schedule 1, 2, yeah, just 2 right now. So if it's in 1, that means it's in the same protection status as a tiger. So I don't get permits anymore to catch them. So to collect blood samples, I've been trying for last 8 months. So we may not know much more about these birds until the Wildlife Protection Act, which is decided by the Parliament, changes. So yeah, I would like to know what are the different hormonal things going on. I think that in general, with stress, the song quality, complexity decreases. So in which case we should be able to find that across a disturbance gradient, for example. Yeah, so yeah, great idea, but it cannot be implemented.
Can we breed them in the lab and then study?
Schedule 1, I mean, basically it's like tiger. Yeah, I already said that. Yeah, no. I mean, you can go to jail if, it's pretty serious. Yeah, but that would have been great. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They are not using because some are like nonsense words. So birds also do like that.
Correct. That's absolutely right. They are only using, if you look at the total, space of whatever, they're using only some. But the thing is, they're using the same, you see the ridiculousness of the whole thing. It's not a random set that they're using, but every year, they can potentially use different sets. So I don't know how they're coming up with these sets. Yeah.
Complexity metric that you spoke about.
Yeah.
Can it be applied to other audio other than birds?
Maybe. Recently, somebody approached Suyash to use that method. He's now developed a package so that anybody can, our package, so that others can also use it. I think they used it for some primate data. Someone from Japan, I think, used it.
No, did you validate it for any other data? Can we use it for something like classical music to quantify the complexity?
Someone has to try it. It's basically just time and frequency. So more time and frequency things are there, bins, that is more complex. So it's actually very simple. I think it's been difficult to do this because of computational challenges and things like that so far. It's not a very, it's actually a very simple thing. Yeah, please.
Did you talk to any musician because they can understand notes very well and make the...
Yeah. I hear this all the time, but initially, like if you look at the history of bird song research, I think in early 1960s when the spectrogram started coming out, people used to study song that way. They used to try to kind of create these, the Saregama equivalent and things like that. They try to create musical notations of different birds' songs. But I have to say that it's actually very simplistic. So this is actually far more complex than that. And we are very quantitative.
Concordance of this metric with some entropy-based metric.
Yes, entropy is the first one, and it does better than entropy. Yeah.
Did you compare this specific of this Sholicola with other birds, like this, what you call the spectrogram of your Sholicola species with other birds?
Yeah. So I think Suyash compared it with, 40 different species or something like that.
Did you find any commonness in case of 2 grams? Because
that's a good question. Very few species of birds first have so many notes and do this gram thing. Usually they have few notes. If you look at North American birds or even South American, actually the New World, the songs are really simple. It's just a few notes. And when they are looking at song differences, it's just a small difference in a note type. And so it's very easy to quantify. It's a lot of the, you have something called open-ended learners, where individuals learn song continuously. So you must have seen these YouTube videos of birds mimicking chainsaws and other things. So that's because they are learning continuously. So those birds actually end up having a lot of variety.
So the logic behind this question was?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the logic behind this question was like, if you compare across any species, while communicating, if we are hungry, the response is pretty, common. So I was across the species of birds, do they have any common kind of notes or song to describe one particular emotion or some sort of that kind?
Not emotion. I don't know about emotion, but I'll tell you
behavior.
Yeah, you could. So not connected to this talk, but there is research, some excellent research by Trevor Price's group in the Himalayas, where he shows that there is convergence of signals, especially when it comes to alarm calls. So the function is the same. So a community, all of them have very similar kinds of frequencies for alarm calls. So that enables interspecies recognition is what is their hypothesis. Sorry.
Add on to what he was asking.
Yeah.
So do you think it's worth exploring to correlate the variation that we see when the migratory birds come and interact with the native population?
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I'm getting the drift of where we are going with that line. I think, so basically what you're saying is that do they learn from other birds, right? So these birds mimic other birds. So many species do that. Like even magpie robins would have a few calls of others. So that is not uncommon. I mean, what is uncommon is that there is that entire variety and all the elements are shared across all the individuals. So that is what is really uncommon. So the fact that they have, like a Besra's call or some other species' call is not very surprising. It happens. I just want to add here, so this is a summary that I think we've said this many times. But I want to particularly point out Chiti, all of these undergrads, they're all mentored by Chiti. So Chiti had a team of 10 students working with her. So all of these projects came up through interactions with her. So it's really fantastic. She's not just leading her own project, but also multiple projects. Suyash was mentored by Chiti, and so was Rohit and also Aditya. So quite a lot of work coming from the team that Chiti's led in some sense. So yeah, I definitely want to thank her, and because I've learned a lot about the species. I thought I knew a lot about it, but turns out no. And then of course a lot of people, including Ashwin, who's here for a lot of work. Thanks. And now we can continue with the questions. We still have a little bit of time.
Yeah, so hi sir. So actually, when do birds sing? Whether it's in a happy mood or
we left the basics quite far behind. Yeah, I should have started there. So basically, birds they sing for a particular. There's a particular function, and it's energetically very expensive for a bird to sing, because any time that the bird is singing, it's not eating. Yeah, so that means that it's a trade-off. That's the first thing. Other thing is that there are lots of studies that show that singing by males particularly is to defend territories and then to attract females. So these are the two common thing of the breeding song. Yeah. So which is what makes you wonder, why are females singing?
So it might be vice versa, sir. So male is singing to attract the females. So female is also creating the competition among the males. like singing in a very complex mode. So for this reason, might be female sings.
So the way it works, I mean, it's a good thought, but the way it works is that the normal, understanding is that there is competition among males, and the females are just listening, and let males compete, and then I'll choose whoever is, the most singing the most complex song, because often it is a indicator of fitness or something like that. But in this case, the males are doing that, but so are females. If we were thinking of an alternate, like a flipped system, where, let's say, there are multiple females with a male, or I don't know which way it would work, but yeah, a flipped system where females are advertising, I mean, I just don't understand how that would work, especially when males are also doing it.
Yeah, that's the only way.
No, see, but the point is that if it needs to make such a complex song, it's energetically very expensive. So, I mean, why go through such a elaborate process when you just don't mate with the male and that's it?
Because female are less and male are more.
Yeah, it's that sample was a little bit biased because we used some playback to catch them. So males generally respond more. Yeah, but in general, it's fairly even sex ratio.
And yeah, one last question.
Sorry, yeah, after that, yeah.
So birds usually detect or predict natural calamities like earthquakes like that.
Yeah.
So is it true?
I don't know. I haven't studied that.
Oh, because,
so for that, I'd have to design a study before, during, and after.
So we can use bird.
I can tell you a story though. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Right. But canning in the coal mine is for air pollution, right? Yeah. I mean, there are even people in my group who think that they can predict, like, thunderstorm and stuff like that. So Viral, who's, I mean, he's been putting out these recorders, and there was this Gaja storm that came, and he tried to see if birds are active before, during, and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know enough. Yeah.
One very naive question, but just length of song.
Yeah.
Have you looked at maybe?
Yeah.
Since it's so energetic, maybe it's just the thing.
For males, or you mean?
I have no idea what female, why.
Yeah.
But in case of males, like,
there's not
the quality rather than complexity.
Yeah, we tried it. There doesn't seem to be that much variation. So we tried all those variables first because that song complexity index also has length included in that metric. So it didn't work. Length was our first one. The number of notes is usually another one, because energetically, within a bout of breath, to make a lot of notes is supposed to be this thing. So we tried these two first. Doesn't seem to work. Yeah, Ansil.
I was also thinking in the similar direction, but not the song length and the habitat, but also about the infection status or something.
Yeah.
Probably, since Farah mentioned that sometimes these infections are costly.
Yeah.
So probably some relationship.
Yeah. That's a collaboration between Ashwin and Chitti. It's happening. Ashwin is doing the the malaria levels, and Chitti is going to bring the acoustic data, and at some point it will come out, I suppose. Yeah. We don't have the answer yet.
I just wanted to give one example where I mean, it's from a different system, but from a recent work from our lab, where, I mean, it's the Rockagama lizard, their males signal.
Sorry, what is it?
The peninsular Rockagama lizards.
Ah, yeah.
Females also signal to males.
What do they signal for?
So till now, I mean, whatever they have seen is, I mean, it's just with the model system. So whenever they present the male model system to a female, females also change colors and different behavioral postures. So it looks like males try to attract females using certain colors and behavioral postures, but females also tend to do that. So I was just wondering whether in birds also it can happen, and maybe that's
interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Thank you. I mean, that's definitely worth thinking about.
Very similar thing is happening with Dracos. Also females have also started to show some. I mean, people have studied them to see like, are there any, not really sexual selection, I would say, but like some sort of signaling by female as well to ward off males and things as well.
But Draco are strange. That is reverse sexual size dimorphism. Females are larger. Yeah.
Yeah, building on to the question of the female and the male call, the female calls were individually recorded, or were they recorded as a response call? Like in a male call, was there any female response call that was recorded?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, so we collect data in different ways. If you remember, there was automated recorders. Those are collected by placing these recorders in the center of the territory, and it just records everything. Yeah, so it's anonymous. We know that it's that individual there, so it's mostly hearing that individual. But in case of the targeted recording, we only record the one that we are pointing the microphone to. Even if others are doing this jugalbandi thing, we don't consider that. So it's only targeted recording. So if I'm recording an individual yellow, if there is a background, another individual recording, we're not considering that. So we know the context very well. The context of the song is very, very clear. So we are not recording responses. We don't do playback. We are only recording natural songs.
If we keep aside the objective of individual recording, has it just been recorded, like female calling in response to male?
I see what you're saying. The problem is we don't know. See, imagine you're out recording, you don't know who's male, who's female. So that is the biggest challenge.
The spectrogram analysis, could it lead somewhere?
As you have seen, no, because the female and male songs are not different.
They have a different pattern though.
No, they don't actually.
Exactly.
I showed you this thing where the female was very small and the male was, but if you look at the statistics, there's a whole, they're roughly similar. Yeah.
Across other species of birds, where there is no sexual dimorphism, do they also have similar songs?
So in general, females have much shorter, reduced songs. They're called sub-songs. So male has a particular song. A small part of it usually is what females have. And this is what everybody's been saying, female song, female song. Just that small part, which they sometimes use as a response. And now I'm thinking that maybe what she was talking about, Agama or Draco, maybe that is the classical match of response with the sub-song. But this is a full-fledged song.
Do you think the sub-songs of females kind of triggers males to sing their,
It's like just going one after the other?
Yeah, you just trigger all the males around you, and then they start singing, and then you select the best.
Yeah, I think he's also coming to this. Basically, if there is one is initiating and the other is responding, is what you're saying, right? So we try and record, we know these birds, we know where they live. So by the time when they're awake, basically these guys are out recording. So I mean, I think we have the full sequence.
So you can't look at the synchronicity of the songs happening.
To what end? To differentiate the male and female, you mean?
Not just to differentiate, to see if there is some synchronicity that is happening.
Oh, that is there. Sequencing is there. So the males, two males responding have very strong sequence, this match.
See, as well as synchronicity, like how long if a female sings, then it's followed by sequentially followed by the male.
We don't have that data. Yeah, good point. We don't have that data.
As it was mentioned that there is song consistency, and every individual every year changes its song, and so does its surrounding community.
Yeah.
Does the song get more and more complex every year?
Through this process? No, it stays the same.
The complexity stays the same.
Yeah, so it's like basically you're saying that they're all similar all through, but within that there are all these changes that are happening. So it's not like the number, it's not just going on increasing, becoming more and more complex through the year. You know, so we thought that there would be a time when as the birds age, like they get more and then they'll come down. So till now, 4 years, it's not happened. I mean, it just stayed the same. Yeah. Yeah, okay, Ashwin.
What season are the female songs recorded from?
Yeah, this is yeah, thanks. March, April, May. I mean, I could say anything, but the point is that we've just opportunistically recorded the female song. Rohit has been trying targeted female song in this April, May, June period, but it's really difficult.
So the number of female songs is not as much as number of male songs that you have.
That is for sure.
So the complexity may change if you sample more and more female songs?
Yeah, possibly. But so one thing that is really different is that if you had these radio tags with microphones on these birds, you'll find that males sing more than females. The problem is that we are looking at these metrics, like you're saying, I'll take 100 songs of females, 100 songs of males. Which is more complex? And then you say, oh yeah, both are same, right? But overall song, the rate of song, that is definitely less for females. Yeah.
So one hypothesis that I was thinking about is that maybe females are looking at how closely a male can mimic their song. So basically they have to have a very complex song. So then whichever male can come closest fit. And so it's more a question of associative learning, or they're testing that rather than anything else. So that's why they're singing.
So, yeah, good question. But I mean, I didn't think of this. But one of the things that Rohit is trying is what is called this adaptive playback, where you record something that's happening and you immediately play back. Instead of having normal playback experiments where you have set control and experiment and so on. So maybe this adaptive playback, it's challenging technically because you have to record and then you have to play what you just recorded. Yeah, but that may be interesting.
Do you think doing a comparative study with other bird species where female also sing like complex songs might shed some light into this?
There is, as far as we know, there's no species that has this complex female song. Like absolutely, like anywhere in the world. Because the person who runs this repository, Karen Odom, she has this repository called Female Songs, and she gets people, every time there's some female song thing, she gets people to put the data in, and we've been talking to her, and everybody is equally perplexed. I think the answer will lie in the field. Just across the Palghat Gap is the Nilgiri. Nilgiri is where you have the Nilgiri Sholicola. That has much shorter song. And I think that I'd like to see what's happening there.
This is not from the entire range of the species, right?
No, this one is just the white belly.
So you might find some differences in other places.
I think that comparison may definitely help.
So do females also have territories?
$1 million question. I mean, they are pair bonded, and we know that pairs have territories. We had radio tags with us. We had the permits, but just before we could deploy them, the Wildlife Protection Act changed. So we won't know.
No, so sorry, I had one follow-up. So basically, if females have territories, right, and these territories are overlapping with multiple males, then
multiple males.
Yeah, so there are multiple males, right, and then there are these females, and then there are some pair bonds that are forming, right?
Yeah,
this
I can
would
right away
explain
say
why
no. Yeah.
Neighboring males start sounding similar to each other, because they're all trying to mimic,
copy the female,
a particular female.
Yeah, but no, male and female territories are, they are roughly similar. So they're pair bonded. It's mostly monogamous, we think. There may be extra pair copulation 100%, but yeah.
So it's a doubt, last one. So it's been heard that a single species bird have a single song, but according to the situation, whether it is behavior, mating time, or alarming time, finding territories, they will change the song.
Yeah.
Is it they completely change the song, or whether any frequency change? How?
Yeah, so I forgot to set the frame of reference here. I got it. Yeah, so I forgot to set the frame, which is that there are different kinds of vocalizations birds can make. You have alarm calls, you have contact calls, but there is one thing called the breeding song. Okay, so that is what we are talking about. So it's only one type of song within which we are. So usually breeding song is the most elaborate one, and then you have parts of that for various other functions. So song has frequency, like, yeah, something may change. Yeah, alarm calls, some things may change. Yeah. All right, I think, yeah.
The calls, is it, so it's being recorded regularly. Is it being recorded throughout the years? Individual recordings of tagged male?
Not really. We only do it during the breeding season, because in the other time they don't have the song. If you remember that circle thing.
But there is some amount of calls. The basis to this question is, can we try to understand when it changes its call in the year?
That is there. That's part of Aditya's project. He's trying to see also what elements are changing as you go from non-breeding to breeding. How does that switch happen? It's very rapid because it's hormonal. All right, thank you very much.